Hello and welcome to When Grooms Get Engaged, the podcast about a guy's perspective to wedding planning from two guys that are currently trying to survive their own. I'm Steve.
And I'm Chris. And each week we will talk about how we navigated a different part of the wedding planning journey, what we learned in the process, and what maybe we had wished we had done differently. So, Steve, what are we talking about this week, and what are we planning for?
Oh, Chris. This week we are talking about the next steps after you've settled on a budget, figured out a guest count, kind of figured out a venue, and you have the sneaking suspicion that maybe, just maybe, you can't do everything by yourself. So you might want to hire a wedding planner. And Chris, we're going to kind of talk about the pros and cons of hiring one and see if it's something that maybe you should consider doing for yourself.
What kind of wedding planners are there, Steve?
Oh, Chris, I'm glad you asked. So there's a lot of them, apparently, which I wasn't aware of until, kind of going down this rabbit hole. Now, when you say wedding planner, people probably think, the full service planner. So this would be the person that is with you from start to finish. They help you find vendors. They help you find a venue. They go with you to your showings. They walk you through your budget. They do all of your day off stuff. They are essentially your assistant in all of this. They are your go-to for all of this. They have your calendars. They are with you every step of the way. And these will be obviously the most expensive ones. And these are the ones that you're going to need to talk to and hire ASAP right in the beginning if this is something that you want. Outside of that, Chris, there's also month of planners. Can you tell us some more about that?
Yeah, month of or partial planners kind of fit under a slot just beneath that, full service wedding planner. So you are ultimately responsible for hiring your vendors and doing a lot of the executing on a lot of the plans. However, they will help you along the way, make sure that you're sticking to a timeline, also help you with your budget. But ultimately, unlike a full wedding planner, they're not making decisions on your behalf, right? They're kind of keeping you on track and helping you map out, 8 months in advance, 6 months in advance, 4 months in advance. What do we need to be thinking about? What do we need to execute on? What should I start thinking about now? What do I need to kind of like keep in my mind's eye for a couple weeks from now? So definitely helpful, but they're going to be cheaper than your full service wedding planner. So you can kind of decide what's best for you. And then what's the last one, Steve?
The last one would be your day off or maybe a whole weekend coordinator. So this is your planner that's essentially just going to be there during the wedding, the welcome party, maybe probably not your, after wedding brunch or something, but during the welcome party and the wedding, any church related things. And this planner is there while, you're getting ready, while you're taking pictures, while you're talking with family. They're the ones in the background that are making sure vendors show up on time. Photographer, videographer, DJ is set up where they need to be. There is someone communicating between the different vendors and the venue to make sure that essentially everything goes smoothly, everything that you envision actually happens, because you will not be available to do any of that. So, Chris, there's definitely a lot of different versions of the wedding planner. And I'm curious for you two, how deep into your wedding planning journey did you go until you realized, hey, I need at least one of these people?
Yeah, I think for us, we had signed the venue, which was also our caterer. And we were looking at other vendors. So that being DJs, photographers, we were starting to get into that kind of decision-making process, that part of the schedule. And we realized that we don't really have a clear vision for our wedding. And, we also are very organized people, but we feared that there was a whole lot of things we didn't know. And so we ultimately interviewed, I think, about 5 or 6 different wedding planners to decide if, we thought they were worth it and kind of get estimates. And, we found one that was very helpful, had a similar background to my fiance. So we're going to be able to incorporate, kind of a mixed race wedding, and had insight into some Asian traditions in weddings, and so be able to help guide us into kind of melding kind of a Western and Eastern kind of a wedding. So that was kind of I'm really happy we found them because they've been a great service to us.
And how long since the moment you decided you needed a planner to actually hiring one? How long did that take you?
I think we probably started interviewing, and probably over the course of 2 weeks, because we had 5 or 6, we wanted to make sure we got all different levels and types of wedding planners. And then we executed it pretty quickly after that. We wanted them to join us early on in the journey, despite being, they were not a full service wedding planner. They had that package, but we wanted more partial planning. So we wanted them involved early enough to make sure that, because they were also willing to listen in on our vendor calls, when we were interviewing photographers or interviewing DJs, they would sit in on the call and be able to help us ask the right questions to make sure that we were finding the right person for our wedding and for our vision. So, we wanted to get them involved earlier on to make sure that we were maximizing their value.
Yeah. And just to kind of go back to our prior episode talking about timelines, if you are going to use a vendor or a wedding planner, that sounds like 2 to 4 weeks you should give yourself to find the right one, at least, so you should definitely add that into your time as well.
Mm-hmm.
But just kind of moving on from that now,
real quick before we get too far, just really quick about day of coordinators. Any good day of coordinator, should actually be kind of like a week out or 2 weeks out coordinator, kind of. You maybe think about it more like that, because they should be having those conversations with you. They should be asking for all of the contracts, for all of the vendor contacts, for all of your, vision boards, mood boards, everything that you've communicated up to that point, so that they can make sure that they're executing on the day of. So, that shouldn't happen on the day of the wedding. And we'll likely start a couple weeks before the wedding to make sure that they have a handle on everything that you need day of. But again, you will have made all of those decisions up until about that, 2 to 3 weeks out point in the process. So, they're not going to be able to help you with a lot. They're just there to coordinate and make sure everything gets executed properly for you.
And now I know it's maybe easy to think that, hey, I've planned my wedding up to this point. I've done all the decisions. Do I really need a day of coordinator? I know this. Let me tell you, I mean, I haven't actually gone through with a wedding yet, right? But I'm assuming, just knowing what's coming ahead of me, you are not going to be able to handle all the things coming at you and get married during the same day. Yes, you made the decisions, but Chris, I don't know about you, but I feel like out of all the different wedding planners, I think the day of coordinator, weekend coordinator, week of coordinator, whatever you want to call them, is probably the most important one, and the one that you should definitely consider at minimum getting.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think a lot of venues in Chicago and in major cities will also require a day of planner if the venue does not offer that service themselves, because the venue, unfortunately, then is the one fielding all of the calls, and they don't have all of the information, and they're just there to make sure everything you've talked about happens. But, it's not coordinating with Uncle Bob down the road and, your 16 other vendors and making sure the band showed up on time. They're dealing with just making sure everything kind of happens that you talked about for the venue. So a lot of venues now are requiring a day of coordinator, so that you have someone on the ground that can be kind of the captain or the general, answering all the different questions from all the different vendors.
Yeah, and Uncle Bob will talk your ear off. But thankfully, with the day of coordinator, you won't have to deal with him. So I definitely, it sounds like we agree, definitely consider that at least. But taking a step back, Chris, when I was researching this, I was looking at the different kinds of coordinators, right? And for us in Greece, we went with the full service one because we can't be there. We can't be looking at vendors. We can't be going on walks every other weekend. So it's good to kind of have that fallback. But the month of planner, like, to me, that one doesn't make that much sense. Because it just seems like you're paying a little bit less than a full service, but getting also a lot less. So like, I don't know. But again, each person is different, right? Depending on what their needs are.
Yeah, I think just touching on that and kind of maybe also taking, maybe starting at the beginning. I think everyone, like, you should be factoring in the wedding planner into your budget first, and kind of, you can get estimates online and kind of see generally where lines fall. Every wedding planner is going to be a little bit different, but you can kind of see the different packages out there and kind of decide what's best for you. So just make sure you're incorporating their cost into your overall budget. And now sometimes if you're trying to go, if your wedding budget is maybe on the lower end, you're trying to get, to that 25K wedding, a full service or even partial planner can easily be $5,000. And so if your budget is 20 to 25K, that's going to eat up a significant part of your budget. So maybe you want to think of a day of or week out coordinator. Just something to really think about at the beginning as you're also creating your budget.
Yeah, and to give you an idea, at least in Greece, the structure was a flat fee or a percent of budget, after that flat fee.
Interesting.
So I think it was 10%, I believe, was all the planners that we talked to. And the budget did not include venue, if I remember right. Yeah, so it was like the budget of like the food, the DJ, and any like food and beverage essentially, and any sort of like flowers decorations. And it was 10% of that.
Wow. That's interesting. I didn't see any percentage of cost in the United States. So that's interesting that you saw something different.
Yeah, I mean that's how it was in Greece, which to me makes sense, right? Because if you have more costs, presumably you have more stuff, So naturally the wedding planner is doing more versus like a flat fee, which I'm assuming is that kind of how it's structured in the US.
I think, yeah. So again, also there might be listeners that your budget is huge, right? You some people go all out for their wedding and it could be, 6 figures plus because you have you want to have it downtown, you want to have it in a large church, you have a very large guest count, you have 800 people showing up, right? Some people, and you might need like a lot of florals, right? Or it might be like in certain cultures, weddings are multi-day events, right? Mm-hmm. So you need multiple venues on multiple days, and decorations for all of those. So, budget is fluid and can be very, very large. And I think I would recommend, if you are also having to deal with a lot of different vendors and have a very large budget, take advantage of a wedding planner. Put that into your budget. It's going to be the best money you ever spent because they will be able to take a lot of stress, a lot of planning, a lot of coordination away from you.
So, Chris, I think this is a good time to talk about what a wedding planner actually does. And you mentioned a very, very important thing, which is vendors and coordination with them. So ultimately, at the end of the day, a wedding planner will listen to what you want and they will give you options on how to get it done. The good thing about this is that if you hire a good one that has a lot of connections in the city, they will be able to connect you with people that are not a Google search away, which is great.
And if I can just interrupt you, this was the most valuable piece. And another reason why, because my fiance and I are not in Chicago, right? We lived there for a long time. We're having our wedding in Chicago, but we don't live there currently. So one, we wanted to have, someone with boots on the ground. And then two, that had those connections, have a lot of experience in the city. Because like, you start talking about like pipe and drape, right? Like whether you want pipe and drape as like part of your decorations, who hires that? How do I find that person? Where do I look? Do I Google that? How do I know I can trust them? Whether they're reputable or not, they're going to show up on my wedding day. So your wedding planner should have a vast Rolodex, as a dated term, of people that they've worked with, and can provide, recommendations for that can help make the wedding planning process so much easier for you. That, they can give you a list of 5 to 10 DJs or 5 to 10, bands that would fit like what you're looking for, florists, et cetera, et cetera. So they are a great resource, and it was one of the things we leaned on them the most for.
Yeah, and Chris, you also mentioned something else. They would give you these recommendations based on what they think you would like. So, you're interviewing these planners. You don't just pick the first one. Like, they get a sense of who you are as a couple. They get a sense of your vision. I know for us, our wedding planner had us create, a Pinterest board of like what's important to us in a wedding. What kind of colors, what kind of decorations, what kind of food, just to kind of get an idea of who we are as a couple, what we kind of want this. And then when we go to her and we're like, hey, we want to do, this, and that, she's not going to give us like some random vendor that does the complete opposite of that, because it's a waste of both of our times, so you'll get a list of, 2, 3, 4 of them, but you can bet that those are something that is kind of within your vision. So your wedding planner is more than just, connecting you with a vendor you would never think about. It was connecting with a vendor that you don't even know exists that also will kind of meet what you want to get done.
And you brought up a great point there too. I think helping with vision was also a great, resource with us, because, I've mentioned it in a lot of different episodes. My fiance and I, we did not have a clear picture of our wedding in our minds. And so we had little touchstones and little things that we thought were really cool. But they were, very much able to help us kind of, flesh out our vision and what we wanted on our day. So like it can help you do that. And they've probably seen a million different weddings and can recommend, something that's going to fit your style and kind of help you make your, that dream come true.
Yeah. And to give you an idea of kind of that in action, Chris, when we were talking to our wedding planner in Greece, in the very beginning, we were thinking about potentially getting married there. And she was like, listen, we can do this. Obviously, you're the client. We'll tell you how to get done. It's going to cost you whatever it's going to cost you. We can get it done. But here's the thing. It's going to be July. It's going to be hot. We have to take guests from the church with no air conditioning on an island, put them on buses, put them up the mountain, back in the villa. We've had people faint before. No one is happy doing this. Like, think about it if you want us to go through on this. But if you don't, these are all great reasons not to. So your your wedding planner will help you get things done, but will also be like, hey, I know you want to get this done. Realistically, this is what needs to happen for that to get done. And I don't know if you're going to have a good time if that were to happen.
Yeah, they should be the experts in their fields, and especially for, that local community, right? So it's great that you had someone that knew the area and had done weddings there before to be able to make those recommendations for you. And that's ultimately what we looked for too, was like someone who knew the city in and out and could help us with those connections and kind of steer us in the right direction on what we wanted to do and what we need to do for the day of.
Yeah. So your wedding planner will also negotiate on your behalf,
Mm-hmm.
and handle a lot of communications with the different vendors, which is great. They will also filter out a lot of the noise and maybe give you like the most important points that you need to consider. Because like you'll talk to a lot of these vendors, and a lot of times like these are people in sales, they'll spin points to maybe give you the best like view on it. They'll neglect to mention some things, but your wedding planner should help you kind of, like filter through a lot of that noise and kind of just get to the bottom level of what you need to consider.
I also think something that's important too is, I kind of maybe started off a little harshly in turn talking about how much wedding planners potentially cost, and might seem like a big figure and a big, money sink. But I think one of the other valuable resources that are maybe not thought about all that often is that your wedding planner can also help you save money. They can make sure that they're watching that budget that you've set with them ahead of time and making sure you're not overspending, and can keep you on track and can keep you within that budget. So, think about that as also they are a great resource, can also help you save money as well.
Yeah. And not even, yes, saving money, but also kind of keeping you focused. So when you get down to the the decorations, I don't know why I can't speak. Part of it's very easy to overdo it, right? Like candles all small. Oh, they're cheap. Hey, maybe I should put 150 candles on this table. Your wedding planner would be like, hey, listen, I made 1,000,000 weddings. You just need 50 candles. It looks beautiful. No one's going to tell the difference between 50 or 150. It's going to look cluttered. So, like, they'll back you off there. Maybe they'll tell you these tables, like, you don't need the giant flower piece. Maybe you need the medium size. They'll save another 20, $30 a table. Like, there's all these little things because they've seen so many weddings. They've done so many weddings. And as with anything that you've done a million times before, you know what works, what doesn't work, and then what looks awkward, right? So listen to what they say. They can definitely save you money. Even if they don't save you money, they'll save you headaches, right? Which is worth even more sometimes.
Yeah, I think time and stress will be something that they help mitigate for you, right? Like a lot of couples are, obviously both of you potentially work, right? Have busy schedules. And so can you plan this wedding between the two of you? Yeah, probably. But you're spending a lot of extra hours, after the workday to make sure everything gets executed, right? And so the wedding planner can help take some things off of your plate so that you have more free time, right? It's let them be the experts, let them run with your ideas, let them execute on some things so that you don't have to. Especially if you're both very, very busy individuals or are always traveling. And then, wedding planning is very stressful. So having a sounding board or just someone to talk to about the process and where you are can make you feel a lot more comfortable to be reassured that you're on schedule and you're thinking about everything you need to think about.
Yeah. And it's so nice that you can just kind of like wake up with an idea, shoot an email to your wedding planner and be like, hey, I don't know if this is possible, but we were just curious. And then, the next day you get a response, you get 3 options, you get a price, and you're like, oh, hey, that's too much. That's okay. We're good without doing it.
Yep.
But like,
we did that for sure.
Yeah, like so many times. But like instead, or without a wedding planner, you're like, hey, this is a good idea. You Google whatever you want to do, Chicago, you find like 30 different companies. You don't see that anywhere on the like website. You're like, okay, do I need to call them? Do I need to email them? You send out a bunch of communications, you get none back. This is another thing that we ran into, like dealing in Greece specifically. Like, yeah, we can email some of these people, but like it's the winter right now. No one's there. No one's going to respond to anything. Like, unless it's someone they know, they're not going to respond. They're like, I open up in May, after Easter. Email me there. But like, we're getting married in July 7th. We don't need a response like a month before our wedding. Like, we need it now, But like, our wedding planner knows these people. She can actually communicate directly with them and get an answer for it. So yes, it costs money, but you're paying for access, you're paying for time,
expertise,
because like presumably this is your one and only wedding. Like, you don't know what works and what doesn't. But they do, right? That's what.
And logistics, I think, again, just thinking about all of the vendor coordination leading up, into the weeks before the wedding. Like, I don't want to have to be sending out 30 different emails and trying to connect different people and then making sure that they're, they've been followed up with and understand. And then also on the day of, like, texting those vendors to make sure that they're executing and on time, or going to be at the right place. Once you start thinking about it that way, you're like, wow, this is money well spent.
Yeah. And oh my God, Chris, logistics, again, with our wedding planner, for the welcome party, we were looking at potentially like 2 beach venues, to kind of give the people the feel of the island. And we liked one more, and we kind of got a quote for that. And she's like, listen, I know you like this one more. I know it's bigger, but because of the road, getting people to and from there requires minibuses instead of a full bus, which instead of 1 bus, you'll need 8 minibuses. The road is tiny, people are not going to be happy with it. It's just something to consider. Again, we can get it done, but just know this is what's going to have to, be to get that done. And ultimately, we didn't go with that because, that would have been needlessly expensive, and it would have been annoying for guests to come from that place.
One of the interview questions or came up in our interview process, and I really loved it, was she was saying, then also, a week before the wedding, you can send us a list of any friends or family members that might, hit the alcohol a little too hard or, might say inappropriate things or just need someone, someone you think might need to be kept an eye on. And they're like, that's what we're here for as well. You can tell us, who, give us a picture or a description and we'll make sure we're looking out for them to make sure, we're either giving them a lot of water or, steering them away from certain people. Like if two people don't get along, we can make sure they're not interacting with each other. And, we didn't really have any of those that came to mind, but I love that she was thinking about that. And just, again, it was just part of the expertise. And we're like, okay, we feel safe in your hands because you've thought about everything.
And that keeping someone sober that would normally get drunk and potentially preventing a fight is priceless. Nothing will ruin a wedding more than two drunks throwing drinks at each other, so that's amazing that they asked. That's pretty thankful. That's pretty helpful. Absolutely. I would feel good if someone asked me that.
Right. And then you can just, again, then it's something also that, they're willing to handle, step in and deal with, and that you don't have to, so you can focus on having a good time at your wedding.
Well, it's not just even that. It's preempting, hey, this could be an issue, but we have a contingency if it does become one. So yeah, these are all things that a good wedding planner, will do for you and can help you out in the wedding planning process.
And it may sound obvious, but I just want to reemphasize too, if you're having a complex wedding, you're going to have a lot of florals, you're having multiple events, you're having a large guest list, highly consider at least a partial planner to help make sure that you just got everything coordinated correctly. Because that high complexity is going to cause you a lot of stress down the road, or especially when it's crunch time, again, at that 30 to 45 day mark. So it's going to be the best money ever spent, especially if you have a complex wedding or a complex vision.
Chris, did we define the difference between partial and full service planners?
Touch on it briefly, but basically a full service planner is going to be able to make decisions on your behalf a lot of times, right? They're going to be able to do interviews themselves, hire people they think they're going to fit within the budget that you set and the vision that you want. And obviously you can be involved in those too, but they're willing to take on that for you and just kind of make sure that you're kept in the loop, kind of provide summaries, and they're able to fully execute on your behalf. Partial planning, again, usually comes in, different planners will have different time frames, but maybe 6 to 8 months out, you have maybe some regularly scheduled calls. Again, they want to be in the loop. They want all the invoices. They want all the contracts that you've signed. They can make recommendations for all those vendors that you still might be outstanding, making sure you're interviewing vendors on time, right? You're not waiting too close to the actual wedding date, before locking up these vendors. So again, just keeping you on schedule, but you are ultimately making the decisions. You are ultimately, executing on the interviews, and there's a resource and a sounding board and can provide advice in the background for you. So those are kind of the two differences.
Mm-hmm. And like you mentioned, depending on how complex your wedding is, that is going to skew you towards one or the other. Obviously, if your wedding is in, a backyard, you have 30 guests, you're not going to need a wedding planner. But Chris, like you mentioned, if your wedding is, 300 guests, you have 50K
transportation.
Transportation for everyone. You have 3 events. You have very strict start times for all of the things that you're doing for this wedding.
Yeah, if you have, especially also if your venue and your caterer are different, right? So for us, our venue and caterer are the same. They're all in the same place, same building, same company. But if those two are different, that's also going to be a complex setup and something that you might need their help with.
That's actually a very good point. I didn't even think about it because all of our vendors are different. None of them are related to each other. But because we have a wedding planner and like she has everything written down, like we have no concerns. But yeah, you're right. If all your vendors are different, none of them are talking to each other. And if they have to go through you to kind of figure out what they need to do, that just adds so many roadblocks to like get things done on time. Whereas if you have
so many emails, many phone calls,
it's just like presumably like you're doing this while you're trying to take pictures of you getting ready. Like that's physically impossible. You're either going to like plan your wedding and like tell people where to go, or you're going to be in the wedding and enjoying it. Like you can't do both.
Yeah. And I touched on it before, but they're able to also take some of the load of family questions, right? So, if no one reads your your wedding website or reads the invitation that you sent them that has very clear instructions, they're able to tackle some of those questions and provide answers. Something nice about our wedding planner also speaks Mandarin, and so is going to be able to translate some of the the ceremony verbiage into Mandarin for some of the people that English is a second language. So it's something that we took into consideration when hiring our wedding planners, like having a couple of those like special moments and like provide some extras for us.
Yeah, that's kind of funny because for us it's a little reversed. It's good that like they speak English, it just makes it easier to communicate. Like, yeah, some of my family can speak Greek, sure, but a lot of my friends can't. My Greek is questionable at the moment. So it's good that she spoke English.
Great. Anything else you want to touch on with wedding planning? Anything else that we should be thinking about?
Decide this sooner rather than later. If you're going to pay it, you want to hire the planner sooner in your wedding planning journey so that you make more use and get more value out of them. Because like you may be, 4 months until your wedding and you get swamped and you realize that, hey, I need one now, but you've made most of the decisions at this point. They're not going to give you much value until the actual day of where they can organize everything. So if you do think you're going to need one, if you do think that your vision is pretty complex, has a lot going on, hire them sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And I think you have all different levels of planning. And so I think you can, with a few interviews, find someone that fits within your budget. And I think it is, speaking from experience as of right now, I think it's worth it, right? It's worth that cost to make sure you have peace of mind and for them to be able to, again, take some of the extra time and planning and logistics away from your day, so that you can focus obviously on your normal job and everything else you have going on in your life. They're able to take some of this planning process and event planning away from you.
And I actually just want to mention one more thing. We kind of glossed over it, but if you are going to go this route, definitely don't be afraid to interview multiple people. Ultimately, Chris, I know you said you guys had 5 or 6 interviews. I know we interviewed at least 3 different wedding planners and kind of reached out to a couple more. It's something that these are the people that you're going to be building a relationship with and helping you plan your vision at least 12 months down the road. Don't be afraid to like cut people loose if they just, say something that doesn't like go with your vision, or they can't communicate well with you. Like, don't be obligated to go to the first person that you talk to.
Yeah, definitely interview around, because you'll never know like who stands out to you if you only interview one person. And yeah, so like I think our wedding planner was maybe the second one we interviewed, but we did a few more after that, and then we're like, no, everyone didn't match up to like one of the first interviews we did early on in the process. And so we're like, no, that was definitely the company we want to go with.
Yeah, so definitely, interview around, maybe ask some friends, right? If they have anyone they like, that's a good resource to have as well. But this is something that, while you may not think about it, it's definitely something very important and can provide you a lot of value, or at least minimize a lot of headaches.
Yeah, I think this is probably the first and only wedding that you've ever planned for most of us, and I'm not sure how much event planning experience our listeners have. Obviously, there's a lot of great resources out there, a lot of great articles on the internet to refer to help you, manage and plan for your wedding. But actually having someone with the experience and knowledge to be able to text, to email, to call, it's invaluable. So I'll just reiterate, I highly recommend at least some wedding planning service.
Yeah, Chris, echo that completely. Very important. Don't overlook it, right? As with everything wedding related, it takes longer than you think, and there's a lot more to do than you think. So don't underestimate it, and ask for help, even if you have to pay for it. It's fine. Nothing wrong with that.
Great. I think we appreciate everyone listening, and stay tuned for the next episode.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. And with that, actually, let's give people a tease. I think we're going to be talking about stationery the next episode.
Ooh, stationery.
Which PTSD for me, so that's going to be a fun topic.
I think you have a great story, so I hope everyone tunes in.
Well, Chris, I'll see you soon, and everyone, thanks for listening.
Take care.
Bye.